Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
And once again, ladies and gentlemen, your beloved host taken to task on three separate pieces today. I was going to say three separate occasions. Your beloved host being blamed for what's happening in the Republican primary. Three different places, all from the establishment-related media. Well, at least some of it is. And I'll have details for you coming up momentarily. Great to have you here, Rush Limbaugh, meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. Great to have you. Telephone number is 800-282-2882, and the email address is lrushbaugh@eibnet.com. We're going to get to the Republican side here in just a minute, but you may not know what happened on the Democrat side because Donald Trump totally owned all media last night. He went up to Trump, whatever it is, golf course in Jupiter that Jack Nicklaus designed and Paul O'Neill endorsed, and Trump steaks and Trump water and Trump vodka and Trump wine were being given away to a readily acceptable media. They couldn't wait to get their hands on the stuff. And nobody knows what went on the Democrat side, and it's actually kind of funny. Bernie Sanders, who, by the way, look at this Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal. They took out after me last week. No, what was it? Well, I don't know. When I miss a day, I lose track of what day things happened. I wasn't here Monday. So it was when Brett Stevens went on with somebody and blamed me for the fact that Trump is running away with things that haven't come out against Trump. Yet they have, and National Review has, and they're unable to stop him. So I guess it falls to me, while they admit they can't. Anyway, Wall Street Journal, Gerald Seib. Look at, you want to know why the establishment's got the problems it's got? Here's the headline of the story. Angry white males propel Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Angry white males. How old is that? That goes back to at least 1988 when this program began. That's how stale, that's how old the degree of criticism is. But angry white males was never used before by the Wall Street Journal. It was only used by leftists, Democrats, the drive-by media to characterize you in this audience and others in the Republican/conservative side of things. But now here's the Wall Street Journal joining the chorus. That it's angry white males. I guess the establishment has no choice but then to unify here and to pool resources and come up with what they guess is their best ammo. And once again, what do? Go after voters, go after hosts, go after people other than themselves. The blame has to lay somewhere other than in their own backyards. You want to know why Trump's doing well? I mean, I've spent how many hours on this program explaining it, analyzing it? Seems like the news every day. Somebody new, and combined with all those who have spoken previously, come out, don't vote Trump, don't vote Trump, don't vote Trump, Trump sucks, Trump this. You know where Mitt Romney was last night? The presidential, the revered, the respected, the severe conservative Mitt Romney. You know where he was? He was on Jimmy Kimmel Live reading mean tweets that he's gotten since coming out against Trump. That's really presidential. I mean, that's really a cut above. So it's full-fledged panic time now in the drive-by media. There's a Politico story. GOP establishment creeps toward Cruz. Ted, the only possibility to stop Trump, says a Bush loyalist, and they hate that. They hate having to coalesce behind Cruz. Carly Fiorina did today. In a surprise, she not only endorsed Cruz, she introduced him in a stem winder. It was a great speech, maybe better than any speech she ever gave on her own behalf, down in Miami just an hour or so ago. So there's lots of movement. Marco Rubio had another horrible night last night. The pressure's on him to get out now. More on that in just a moment. We'll put all this together in a moment. But first, on the Democrat side, the drive-by media and their polling units told everybody that Hillary Clinton was going to beat Crazy Bernie in Michigan by anywhere from 27 to 30 points. And Crazy Bernie won. Nobody really knew because everybody was watching Trump. But Crazy Bernie beat Hillary last night anywhere from 1.5 to 2 points. The polls, as I say, had Hillary up anywhere from 27 to 37 points. It was this is one of the biggest polling misses in a long time. The previous record, I looked it up today, previous record for polling inaccuracy had been from 1984 when Walter F. Mondale was supposed to beat Gary Hartpence in New Hampshire by 17 points. And, of course, Hartpence ended up beating Mondale. That was just in New Hampshire. But this Michigan polling fiasco doubled that error. But here's the thing. Bernie Sanders just cleaned up. You know what the real question about this is? Did Bernie just indicate that Donald Trump could beat Hillary in Michigan? Did Bernie beating Hillary? That's the way you have to look at this, Snerdley. You have to look at this outside the boundaries they've set up for us. So Hillary gets creamed in a Democrat primary by crazy Bernie. And here's Gerald Seib in the Wall Street Journal with a story talking about all the similarities there are between crazy Bernie and the Trumpster. And the commonality is angry white males. What that means is legitimately ticked off members of the white middle class who have depended on everybody in the establishment in both parties they voted for to make their lives better. And as we've been chronicling for the past number of, days here, but weeks, they've blown everything. They have screwed everything. They've ruined what a college education was designed to do. They've screwed up the American healthcare system. They have screwed up the budget. We're $19 trillion in debt. The education system itself is an abject mess. Before you even get to college, you don't learn anything when you graduate, nothing worthwhile. And they're fed up. And because they're fed up, they are characterized, impugned as angry white men, angry white. But what they are is the white working class. Thomas B. Edsall of the New York Times, formerly written a piece in November of 2012, actually 2011, telling everybody working for the Obama campaign they were going to write off the white working class and focus on demographic minorities, which they did. And the Republican establishment's done pretty much the same as they track the same direction the Democrats go, thinking they can't win unless they shift their demographic appeal and attract more minorities. So who's been forgotten? White working class. Call them Reagan Democrats. Call them angry white males, as the Wall Street Journal is now doing. But the point is, they were the margin of victory for crazy Bernie in Michigan, and crazy Bernie beating Hillary means that Trump could as well. That's the way you have to look at this. And Trump putting Michigan in play, why is that relevant? Trump, maybe he's bragging about upstate New York and his popularity there, putting that in play. And it's important because there's some pressure. It's subtle right now, but there's pressure on Trump to choose Kasich as his vice president. The only reason to do that would be if you think you need Ohio, and then if you think Kasich on your team can get you Ohio. I think Kasich, if he's going to have a job in any administration, needs to be postmaster general. But if somebody's thinking of putting him on the ticket as VP, it'd be because you need Ohio. But if Trump thinks he doesn't need Ohio, then there'd be no reason for that. By the way, speaking of VP, Trump said to Marco Rubio, I'm not going to even think of you. I'm not even going to consider you for VP until you get out of the race. But wait, I thought the conventional wisdom was that Trump wants as many people to stay in the race so that there is not this coalition coming together of anti-Trump votes against him. Then the other side of that is, well, if that continues to happen, that means Trump might not get to 1,237. Although I think last night indicates that's a long shot too. That's a lingering hope. With Marco's unfortunate showing yesterday, how do you go from that to winning Florida? I don't see it. There's nothing that would create momentum or suggest to voters that there's something there. It'd be just the exact opposite. Plus, you have Ted Cruz setting up 10 campaign offices in Florida. Not to win it, but to deny it to Rubio. Payback for Rubio doing the same thing in Texas to Cruz. And the latest polling data has Trump over Kasich in Ohio by 8 points or so. So really a week from yesterday will tell the tale. But it does begin to look like the establishment has no choice, that if they do want to deny Trump, they're going to have to coalesce behind Cruz. And I cannot tell you how much they hate having to do that. I cannot tell you that in the bowels of the establishment citadels, wherever it is they hang out and have their club dinners and so forth, they hate Cruz more than they do Trump. Hate's too strong a word. They don't like Cruz more than they don't like Trump. They know that Cruz means it. They know Cruz is serious. And when he talks about constitutional conservatism, and with Trump, they're not sure what he believes from day to day, and that makes them think that they'll be able to work with him, do deals, and this kind of thing. Trump, for his part, is urging everybody to unify behind him and let's get going and beat Hillary. But the establishment, with the markers they've set down up to now, it's going to be very, very hard for them to do. But I'm telling you, don't pay any attention to this conventional wisdom, because everything you thought was going to happen in this campaign hasn't. Everything you thought was going to happen hasn't. And things that you never believed would happen have happened. And we're not through with that cycle. So there's still plenty of time for things that you don't think in any way, shape, manner, or form could happen to happen. Well, I was going to get to that later. See, Snurdly, how are you to blame for all this? You know, I don't like to make this program about me. I've gotten in the habit of saving all this stuff about me till the final hour so that people don't think that I just do this about me. But there are 3 stories today. Now, did I even put them? Yes. Here's one from thehill.com. Why would conservative media defend Trump? And it mentions me and Fox News Sunday. So Rush Limbaugh said on Fox News Sunday, I think the case of Trump, there's a much bigger upside than downside. But anyone paying attention will be hard-pressed to agree. Limbaugh, who often touts his own speech at CPAC in 2009 as a triumph for the cause, ignores Trump turning his back on the event, and thereby, and then go on to rip me and some other people in there. Here's a piece by Michael Brendan Doherty at The Week, Why Talk Radio Coronated Donald Trump. And maybe I'll get into details of what these people say as we go down the road in the program here, but it's basically an attempt to say that, well, you know, Limbaugh sees himself in Trump. Trump is talk radio, and these guys love seeing the way they do things win politically in Trump. Or it's about money, or it's about ratings, or... I've been doing this 28 years, and even though I have gone into great detail about my passions and my interests, why I do this, and how it is amazing after 28 years that so many people who profess to study this still don't get what I do and how I do it. But beyond that, there's Jonah Goldberg has a piece. There's 3 of them. Jonah Goldberg has a piece in National Review today, not mentioning me, but other conservative elites who have abandoned the cause for Trump. And he cites Stephen Moore, used to be with the Club for Growth, and Larry Kudlow, who Trump cites all the time as having praised Trump's tax plan. And Jonah's all worried and curious why this is happening and tries to explain it. But 3 pieces on the same day. And here's my point about it. All these people, let's add the Wall Street Journal, whatever it was, earlier this week or late last, 4 pieces here in less than a week that essentially blame me and others for the fact that Trump has not been taken out. Blaming me for the fact that Trump is still winning. Blaming me and using whatever analogy they can, sell out, pursuer of ratings and dollars, whatever. The thing is, I don't see any of them endorsing Ted Cruz. I don't see any of them. They're out there ripping Ted Cruz as often as they're ripping me and Trump. I don't see them endorsing anybody. Now, in the case of the Wall Street Journal, as I mentioned yesterday, they, and a National Review, a whole issue devoted to why nobody should vote for Trump. What do people think is going to happen psychologically, particularly at this moment in time in our country, where you have the average American, people I define as the people who make this country work, and here come these supposed betters, the elites, telling everybody what they shouldn't do, don't do this, don't do that, continue to trust us. There isn't any trust left anymore, and that group of elites continues to say, don't vote Trump. All they're doing is sending people to Trump. Romney, it has been documented. Somebody actually ran some statistical data and found out that Romney's speech among the people that heard it converted 11% to Trump. because people have grown weary of being told they're stupid and don't know how to vote or who to vote for until the established more people in that group tell them how to vote. And they react, oh, yeah? Yeah? You don't think we know what we're doing? Well, how? How do you feel about this? And they go out and publicly announce their support for Trump. It seems to happen with Romney. It's happening with all these people. While they sit here and criticize me for not taking Trump out, they admit they haven't been able to do so either. The difference is they've tried. They have tried to take Trump out, and they haven't succeeded. And so now they scapegoat me. But I don't see any of them endorsing Cruz. I don't see any of them extolling the virtues of the conservative movement over all these years. I see many of, not all of them, some exceptions here. The guy at the Week, Michael Doherty, I think I've quoted him in the past and excerpted some of his pieces that I have admired, Michael Brendan Doherty. So I don't know where he comes down, on the ideological ledger, but the Journal and National Review, I mean, these people, even there has been and you talk to anybody in the base about it, the problem with the conservative media is there hasn't been much conservatism defined. There's been an association with the party. There has been an agreement with the concept of open borders and amnesty. This is not a mystery why people are reacting the way they are. And so now, when all of the best and brilliant thinking in the world has not created a majority support for an establishment candidate, it was supposed to be Jeb. And here's Trump, and Trump continues to dazzle and bedazzle and confuse and puzzle and tick them off. They turn to me as a source of blame for the fact that Trump hasn't been taken out, despite the fact that they've tried. But I don't see where they've endorsed other people. I don't see where they have actually engaged in the behavior they demand that I engage in. Back after this. Half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. The dotting the I, crossing the T out of Michigan and the Democrat side. There's Crazy Bernie erases a 37-point polling deficit. Anywhere from 27 to 37%, the polls had him losing to Hillary, beats her by 1.5 to 2 points. And yet she walks away with a majority of the delegates because of the superdelegate arrangement they have and some of the other rigged aspects of the Democrat primary. Bernie Sanders wins Michigan, and all last night on TV and all today, all of the wise men, what I call the analysts and strategists that cable news networks trot out, the wise men, the analysts and so forth, they're all saying, this is just a blip, this doesn't mean anything. The Democrat strategists, even. Bernie winning Michigan? Nah, nothing to see here. It really doesn't mean anything. Take a look at the delegate count. Yeah. We are looking at delegates. How does a guy who wins the vote lose the delegates? Why are you guys even having a primary on the Democrat side? Of course, we can answer the question. It's pro forma. It is to create the illusion that Mrs. Clinton can overcome opposition, win in a knockdown, drag-out fight, and that it isn't a coronation, that Mrs. Clinton's had to fight for it, and that after she wins, she has earned it by virtue of fighting for it. And, of course, the whole thing's rigged. And at some point, Crazy Bernie and his supporters are going to have to get some satisfactory answers to how in the world they can make their guy win in the important state of Michigan and Hillary still wins a majority of the delegates. Just how does that work? Stand by for fireworks on that. Okay, a matter of some serious interest that I want to get to here, folks. But before I swerve into it, there's an audio soundbite I want you to hear. Now, last night, Trump had his victories in a big one in Michigan, and he was scheduled to do another victory press conference, not a victory speech, but a victory press conference with many of the audience consisting of members of the golf club in Jupiter where the event was held. And as the media noted, long before it began, the podium was flanked by samples of Trump products. There was Trump water. There was Trump steaks. There was Trump wine. There were other Trump things there. And it was all there. They were there as obviously placeholders. But it was, the items are going to be used to refute Mitt Romney's claims that all of those Trump businesses have gone belly up or kaput. And Trump, as he says, you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. And so it was time to hit back on these allegations that his businesses are either underwater, bankrupt, broke, what have you. And it was a 1 hour plus press conference, stream of consciousness appearance, tour de force, whatever you want to call it. I had a lot of emails from people thinking, this is the most hilarious, this is the best, this is the whatever. I've never seen anything like this kind of press conference. I actually thought Trump has been better than he was last night. There was something about last night that was a little off to me. Not that it wasn't good and not that it wasn't funny, but I don't know. I can't explain it other than to say I was just a bit mildly surprised at the rave reviews people sent me when it was over. And again, it's a minor point, and it's really not the point at all. But I want to share with you a soundbite. Dr. Krauthammer on the Fox News Channel, when the thing was all over, Brett Baer brings Dr. Krauthammer on to analyze what we've just seen.
I don't think I've ever heard such a stream of disconnected ideas since I quit psychiatry 30 years ago. That was quite a performance, and it was very weird. That was a performance. That was live television. That was reality television, and that nobody can do. And that has its appeal. I think that's going to be really dangerous because he often can go off the reservation, comparing himself to what was it, Abe Lincoln as number 2 in how presidential he is. That's a little bit weird. But he's been able to carry it off. I think people have a sense of humor about him, which is good because otherwise they'd be terrified. And that's what has been carrying him through. In the end, though, it'll be a one-on-one and it'll get a little more serious.
So, look, that's a funny line. I haven't heard such a stream of disconnected ideas since I quit psychiatry 30 years ago. I mean, that may be one of the lines of the campaign. But these guys are clearly flummoxed in trying to understand this. I mean, you've got people saying this is a sacred process. The presidential race, the election for president is a sacred trust, and this guy is just soiling it. He's just making a mockery of it. I don't know what. And then here's Mitt Romney over there on Jimmy Kimmel Live reading mean tweets, and everybody trying to figure out why it is that the American public is not repulsed by this, why they're not worried. This is a presidential campaign, and it is a personal reality show. And everybody's trying to figure out why the American people are not bothered by it. And I can explain it to you as a member of the media and as a student of the media. I can explain it to you if you want, but I'm not going to take a whole lot of time to do that now because it really doesn't matter. The bottom line is people are not bothered by it. A number of people aren't. Some people are, is the point. But can you think back, who was the last president? Seriously now, who was the last president you can think of who treated the office and everything about it with utmost reverence and respect? Who was the last president you can recall that did not mock the process, the job, the position, the behavioral manner, the level of decorum, everything about it? Who was the last president you can think of who treasured, loved, and adored the office of the presidency and would not do anything he thought would bring dishonor to it? That president is George W. Bush. And maybe, if you want to go back, his dad, George H.W. Bush. And then you go back to Ronaldus Magnus. I wouldn't put Obama in that discussion. I wouldn't put Bill Clinton in that discussion. I wouldn't put any single Democrat in that discussion. Now, my point is this. The only one of those presidents when you answer that question, it's relevant right now, is George W. Bush, demographically, generationally. What did it get him? What did, and I remember now, I'm asking the question in the context of everybody wringing their hands over what Trump is doing to damage the sacred trust. How Trump is making a mockery of it. How Trump is lowering it. And it now is no different and no better than a reality show on TV. And this is not what presidential campaigns are supposed to be. It's in that context that I asked the question. George W. Bush treated the office of the presidency with reverence. George W. Bush told me over and over again, whenever I had a chance to be with him, I would constantly ask him, why aren't you pushing back on all this stuff they're saying about you and your administration and people in your administration? They're destroying your judicial nominees. They're out there destroying you. They're claiming you lied, people died. They're claiming that you knew there weren't any weapons of mass destruction. And when he would talk to people privately, he would hit back at them, and you would think, my God, the guy gets it. And you wish this guy would show up on TV. How many times have I told you this? But yet, when it came time to go public, none of that. And what George W. Bush told me was that he refused to take the office of the presidency down to the political gutter by reacting to obvious political chatter and cheap criticism. He told me he had too much respect for the office to take it there, and he couldn't avoid taking the presidency there because he was president. Okay, fine and dandy. Whatever you think of that. The bottom line is, what did it get him? He treated the office with great reverence and great respect and refused to do anything to sully it. Didn't help him a bit. The American people did not have any pride. The American people didn't. The media, Democrat Party was able to convince a majority of Americans that Bush was rotten, that Bush was a liar, that Bush was incompetent, that Bush was stupid, and all of the reverence they showed for the office didn't matter. Now, my point is, when you're trying to understand why aren't people disgusted over what Trump is doing to the office and the campaign and the reverence of all, we've seen now in recent years that we live in a different generational era, particularly in our pop culture. And there are people, and probably an increasing number of people, who don't find anything wrong. In fact, not only do they not find anything wrong about it, they think it's refreshing. They think it's refreshing that a real guy who talks like real people, i.e. like they do, is not acting all heady and lofty and uppity over them and is just behaving like anybody else would, like they would if they were in the same shoes. I find it's a fascinating, maybe not a dichotomy, but it's clearly a dilemma. It's like so many conventional wisdom rules that have always worked in the past are out the window and not working now. And I go back to this Wall Street Journal headline today. Angry white males propel Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. This, to me, I could be wrong about this because there's been so much media over the course of the years of this program, but the best of my recollection is angry white males has always been an epithet used by Democrats to describe Republican voters who don't buy into the Democrat Party. Well, now all of a sudden, we have a supposedly Republican-oriented publication, the Wall Street Journal, now calling Republicans angry white males, and now there are allegations that angry white males are now voting in the Democrat side, too. And I think this is just the establishment trying to comfort itself, to explain what's happening to itself, because they can't figure any of this out. It violates so much of what they thought they had put in place and had total control of. And that's really the nub of this, the panic they feel at having lost control. Now, here's the item that I referenced a moment ago as being important and serious. It is obvious, it is more than obvious, that Marco Rubio and John Kasich do not have a chance at being the Republican nominee, no matter how the nominee is chosen. It's pretty obvious. So the question then becomes, why are they still in the race? Now, some people might say, well, Kasich, you got to understand, he's got to stay in Ohio because that's his home state. Okay, so it's about him, right? Okay, you want to admit that it's about him. Kasich is staying in because it's good for him. And we want to talk about sullying the process. Rubio, why is he staying in? He's not going to win the delegate fight. Now, there might be a case that could be made that if we get to this so-called brokered convention, that the establishment could find a way to make Rubio the nominee. But I'm telling you, if they try that with a guy that has 0 delegates, he had 0 delegates yesterday. If they try to put a guy on the ticket, top of the ticket with 0 delegates or 10 or 50, whatever, there's going to be utter chaos. Yeah, I can't see that happening. So why is Rubio staying in? When there's no way he can win it, why is he staying in? Okay, is the reason he's staying in to harm Cruz because there's personal hatred, professional rivalry, personal dislike? So you ask the question of both Kasich and Rubio, why are, at this point now, I'm not talking about last week, the week before, today, after yesterday's results, are they staying in just to hurt Ted Cruz? Well, I don't know, but if they are, is that what we want? You're shaking your head. No, why are they staying in? Wait just a second. Snerdley just said Rubio can't quit before he faces the voters in Florida. That would be. There are a lot more people today than on Monday saying that Rubio could do real permanent damage to his political career if he stays in and gets schlonged. Not just quits, but if he quits and throws his supports like Fiorina, there's a way to salvage this, is the point. If he quits and goes home, yeah. But he's not going to quit. Look, I got to take a break here because I'm getting, as always, right when I'm getting to the payoff, we got to take a break. And we are back. El Rushbo with half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. Folks, I can't. I was just telling Snerdley, 9:30, 10 o'clock this morning. I'm going through show prep, but I'm putting this all together, and I'm just absorbing everything. I'm not making any calculations, and I'm not adding delegates or any of that. And I'm at the time I'm thinking about, here's Kasich and Rubio, and they're both hopeless in terms of their own chances to win. And a little, flash in my mind that said Ted Cruz can win this. That this isn't, the delegate spread right now is only 100 delegates or something like it. And if you look at the delegate count for the last week, Cruz has won 125 and Trump has won 124. Now, don't miss it. It's a long shot. And I really can't. I've not studied. I can't present to you or lay out a scenario by which it happens. It was just a gut reaction instinct to everything I was absorbing at the time, and it's why I started pondering this interesting aspect here that Rubio and Kasich have no prayer, yet they're staying in. And in both cases, you'd have to say they're both staying in for personal reasons. Kasich staying in for his own state of Ohio, even though he knows he has no prayer. And by the way, isn't it true that the only way anybody on the Republican side other than Trump has a chance is if there is unity on the anti-Trump side of this? And if that doesn't happen, and it's arguable that it will, I mean, Cruz is a polarizing figure, as we all know. But if they're staying in just to hurt Cruz, if Rubio is staying in just to hurt Cruz, it wouldn't surprise me. There's animosity there. And ditto Kasich. If the primary reason they're staying in is not just to get to their home states and do well so they have bragging rights or what have you, but if they're in this specifically to hurt Cruz, doesn't that kind of argue against what we've all been told is the purpose of this whole process? Because if the party coalesces behind Cruz, which the Politico has a story today about how the party's tiptoeing and they're not really crazy about it. Carly Fiorina did today, endorsed Cruz, a great stem winder speech of an introduction for Cruz down in Miami. Cruz was not supposed to do anywhere near as well as he did in last night's or yesterday's elections. He actually expanded beyond his appeal to evangelicals. So anyway, it's something to think about as to when these two guys get out and what it, because look, all this is academic. If Trump does win Florida and Ohio, then it's pretty much it, isn't it? Not officially, but Illinois, yeah. So anyway, it's pedal to the metal time. It is the fastest 3 hours in media. We have a couple more to go, and we'll get to them quickly. We've got your phone calls to squeeze in here, and it looks like a great roster of people waiting to get on. So everybody be patient, hang in there, be tough, and we will be back before you know it. Don't go anywhere. And look at this. Here's another headline. The Politico today, they can't believe. Can you put yourself in their shoes? For their entire existence, they have been besmirching, impugning, and otherwise relegating the Republican Party to insignificant minority status. And yet, the most popular, most talked about political figure in the country today is running as a Republican, Donald Trump. And the Politico, another story, this headline, how are they losing to this guy? How are they losing? Trump's opponents are getting beaten by a guy who uses election night press conferences to peddle his brand of steaks and bottled water. That's not what he did last night. That's what you saw. But that's not what he did. How do these people continue to miss this? You know, these, honest to God, you have to understand, sometimes this stuff gets frustrating. I've given these people the answers to every question they've had for the last 5 months, and they don't listen here, and they don't go to my website and read what I've said. They spend their time at Media Matters reading these out-of-context so-called excerpts of what I've said, or they don't even do that. They get it in their heads that I'm one thing or another and just assume things. They don't even know how to watch Trump now. They don't even know how to see Donald Trump the way people voting for him see him. And not just the people not voting for him. They don't have the ability to see him the way any American watching that last night on TV sees him. But if your takeaway from Trump's press conference last night was that it was an attempt to sell Trump steaks or Trump water, you are missing the boat so badly, it's embarrassing, if that's what you think that was about last night. Well, no. Okay, I'll just tell you. The only reason the Trump steaks and the Trump water and the Trump vodka and the Trump wine, by the way, Trump extolled the virtues of his winery. It formerly was owned 2,600 acres, I think, in Virginia by John Kluge, who was the Metro Media Grand Poobah. Now, I've never had Trump wine, and it may be fine, but he's saying it's the finest wine in the world. And I will guarantee you the people at Chateau Aubryon, Chateau Latour, Chateau Lafite Rothschild are looking at that and chortling. Who in the world is going to believe that Trump vinegar is in any way comparable to what they produce in Bordeaux? But he says it, and people eat it up. They know the thing that people don't get. You have these people like at Politico or anywhere, the Washington establishment, party officials, both Democrats and Republicans, and they watch this and they wring their hands and they go, oh, my God, oh, this is so embarrassing. Oh, this is so bad. Oh, this is so offensive. They do not understand that Trump knows he's putting everybody on. And the trick is that he knows his audience knows he's putting everybody. I'll give you an example of this. Donald Trump knows that his wine is not the best stuff in the world, but his shtick is that everything he does is the best in the world. He's got the best friends. He's got the best clubs. He's got the best golf courses. He's got the best this, and everybody says so. And you laugh about it. You laugh at it. He's not the kind of braggart that offends people. He's a braggart that endears himself to people. It's a personality thing. And there's the hidden bond, I call it, this invisible way that Trump has of connecting with people. Some people refer to it as the it factor. There's all the Q number. There's any number of ways to quantify it and to describe it. But you can't see it. You just know it when you see it. But Trump knows his wine's not the best in the world, and he knows people know that. So he says it anyway, and everybody laughs along with him, and they think it's great, and they think it's marvelous, they think it's cute, whatever they think. But they don't get offended by it. Like Mitt Romney's getting offended, or like somebody else getting offended. They know that some of the things Trump says, like bringing iPhone production back, they don't really expect that to happen. Nobody's electing Trump convinced that iPhones are going to be made in America and all kinds of new jobs. It's the key to that, I think, is this is the way Trump telegraphs his preferences and his support for people. How many times have I asked people to note, and it happened last night 2 or 3 times, it always does. Sometimes they're fleeting, sometimes they take 30 seconds, but at least 3 times in every one of these hour-long either press conferences or speeches, Trump goes all humble. He goes total humility. He thanks everybody. He tells them what an honor it is, and they hear it and they know it. And they recognize the bluster for what it is, and they're not offended by it. And this is what I think people can't see. And if they, again, just to illustrate, if they think the point of this thing last night was a cheap sales gimmick to sell Trump steaks, that's not what he was doing. He wasn't taking the occasion of this to sell Trump merchandise. If that happens as an ancillary thing, fine. But that was clearly Trump having fun. He's got Mitt Romney, Mr. Stiff Shirt, Mr. Pointy Shirt, Mr. So-called rock rib, whatever out there, condemning the way he behaves and condemning his businesses and claiming that they're losing money. And Trump's been very open. And look, you hit me, and I'm going to hit you back, and I'm going to hit you twice as hard as you hit me. And if you accuse me of things that aren't true, I'm going to come out and show people they're not true. So he's doubling down on Trump University, like he's doubled down on every criticism there has been. People are saying his steaks suck, that they don't taste good, that you can't find them, they're out of business. Well, there they are. They were on stage. I saw him last night. And there are a lot of people, he was giving some samples away. People want him. It's the way he deals with it. And by the way, he champions the things he believes in, and that draws crowds. And that, it really isn't hard to understand this stuff. But if you don't know how to see it, if you don't know what you're looking at, then I can see where you might get righteously indignant or offended or what have you. But it's a classic, to me, case study in media, so-called media experts not understanding media. And not understanding or even being able to spot expert usage of it while they're looking at it. Anyway, moving on to other things. This business about Rubio came up in the last hour. Remember the story? Where was this story? Where did it originate? It was a CNN story, was it not? It was a CNN story by Jamie Gangel and one of the reporters, I don't remember the name. And the story was that Marco Rubio supporters, people in his campaign, were suggesting that he get out of the race before the Florida primary next Tuesday to avoid humiliating defeat, to avoid a defeat that could damage his political future. And the report said that Rubio was considering it. Well, after the story hit, there were denials left and right. The New York Times Today headline: Ted Cruz's campaign accused of spreading rumors of Marco Rubio's withdrawal. Oh, really? Are we going to replay the Ben Carson story here? Isn't it apparent what we're doing here now? Ted Cruz had nothing to do with that. Ted Cruz had not a single thing to do. It was I don't care if it doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you it does matter. The people out there know it matters, and they know this is a BS thing from the New York Times, just like they've known all along that what they tried to do to Cruz over this Ben Carson scenario was BS from the get-go. Here's how the story starts. It's by Alan Rappaport. Senator Ted Cruz is under fire from Senator Marco Rubio's campaign, which accuses him and his campaign of employing more dirty tricks ahead of the Republican caucuses in Hawaii. This is a story from yesterday. And spreading false rumors that Rubio's dropping out of the race. Emails that appeared to have come from the Cruz campaign were sent to his supporters in Hawaii, promoting a CNN report. CNN reports that Rubio's own campaign is advising him to get out and that Rubio's considering it. So Cruz, once again, emails the CNN report, and somehow it's Ted Cruz spreading rumors. Okay, Cruz workers somewhere, but it doesn't matter. Cruz workers equals Cruz. It was the Dirty Tricks Cruz campaign. You have a CNN story. You have a full-fledged, just like we had a CNN tweet over Ben Carson, a CNN story about Rubio. Somebody in his campaign is the single source saying they're thinking of getting out to avoid humiliation. So somebody somewhere in the totem pole of Cruz campaign sends the story out to some people in Hawaii, and here we go again. Cruz campaign accused of spreading rumors. This is, I don't know how to describe this. It's so obviously wrong that it is purposeful. It is an attempt. This is the New York Times relying on in their own world, in their own mind, their irrefutable reputation, their indestructible reputation, that whatever they say is. And it's aimed at low-information people who may not have heard at the CNN report, but even they included in here. Emails that appeared to have come from the Cruz campaign were sent to his supporters in Hawaii, promoting a CNN report saying some of Rubio's advisors see no path for him to win the nomination, suggesting he might leave the race before March 15th primary in Florida. Spokesman for Rubio said the report's false. Joe Pounder, spokesman for Rubio, said Senator Cruz is up to his dirty tricks again. So the Rubio campaign went running to the New York Times after CNN reports what one of their own staffers said. The New York Times said, hey, we'll gladly take that story, and they run it that Ted Cruz is spreading rumors. I love it. Look, I'm infuriated, don't misunderstand, but you just have to laugh at this stuff. It's so patently ridiculous. And it's exactly the shape and form the Ben Carson story took as well. Politico, GOP establishment creeps toward Cruz. A Bush loyalist unnamed said Ted's the only possibility to stop Trump. Panicked at Trump's dominance, dismayed by Rubio's continued inability to do anything about it, some top Republican power brokers are turning to Cruz, putting aside their policy and personal misgivings to back the candidate they now openly label as their best hope to stop Trump's GOP takeover. He seems to be the only guy who's got some momentum. Probably the best situated, if there's anybody out there to beat Trump, said Austin Barber, a prominent Mississippi-based GOP operative. Prominent? Barber. I've heard that name. Who could this be? Oh, it's Haley Barber's nephew. That's who it. Haley Barber of the establishment Republicans. It's his nephew tiptoeing up to the line where the establishment might have to get behind Cruz. Let me take a timeout. We'll come back. It's time to start swerving into your phone calls, folks. Looking forward to that, so hang in there. Be tough. Be back. We start on the phones in Dallas today. This is Steve. It's great to have you on the program. Hi.
Hi, Rush. It's such an honor to get to talk to you once again. Our last conversation was back in 1983, and I've never had the opportunity to say thank you for the gift you gave me back then.
Well,
all these years since then.
You say 1983?
Yes, I had the honor of waiting on you at a restaurant.
That'd be 93.
In San Diego.
At where? At a restaurant.
San Diego.
Okay. In San Diego.
Yes.
83. Oh, it could have been 83. Oh, why? It could have been 83 then. Yeah, it could. He can't hear me, folks. Our phone system champion triumphs again. Steve, go ahead and make your point here, and I'll listen while you. We're not going to be possible for us to talk together because when I'm talking, you can't hear me if you're speaking at the same time. So go ahead and make your point.
The question I have, it seems to me clear, if we wanted to lock up the presidency for the next 16 years, a Trump and Cruz ticket would be the best way to do it. We would be able to resist the establishment and then give the opportunity over the next 16 years for the core conservative to be able to take back the Republican Party. I was curious what your thoughts would be on that.
You know, I've not heard that possible pairing. I have heard, for example, Trump Kasich. We've heard Trump Rubio. That would be kind of hard now, with the way that Mr. Trump has been characterizing Senator Rubio recently, and there hasn't been. I mean, I know he's been hard on Cruz too. He hit Cruz last night, lying Ted. Yeah, lying Ted. You know, Ted's this big liar. He pulls up the Bible. I'm a guy. I'm a great guy. I love the Bible. Puts the Bible down. Starts lying again. Lying Ted. Never met anybody liars bigger than Ted Cruz. Picks up the Bible, says what he says, puts the Bible down, starts lying again. Can somebody like that be on his ticket? If you look at the combination, okay, here's Trump. Would Cruz do it? Let's say Cruz does it, just for the heck of it. We're discussing a hypothetical here. Cruz does it to stay close. Cruz does it to be one step away, one heartbeat away, whatever. Cruz gets out of the Senate, where he ostensibly has no friends. Cruz could provide Trump legislative assistance, liaison assistance, policy assistance, so forth. Could be one of the guardrails, if you will, for Trump on the right. I don't know. At first glance, it seems like one of these things, come on, that would never happen. But it does establish a firm presence. You've got two outsiders, and that's what they have in common on the ticket. And then here's the real question. You have a ticket like that? I have to, Brett Baer, he mentioned this on Monday night on a special report when they were doing the Hillary roundtable or whatever. And Brett Baer's not the only one. I've heard it too. He talked about all of the Republicans. Well, not all. Some Republicans in Washington, elected Republicans, who have told him that if Trump's the nominee, they're voting for Hillary. And I've heard that too. And some of them have been quoted. There have been some Republicans who have allowed themselves to be quoted saying that they are thinking of it, that it's something they might consider, that they might have to do. Now, stop and think of that for just a second. Stop and think what that would actually be. And when these establishment types, Republicans, go out and say that to people like Brett Baer so he can then repeat it, they're not helping themselves. They are confirming what everybody supporting Trump, supporting Cruz believes, that they really aren't Republicans, that they really aren't that opposed to the Obama or Democrat agenda. How in the world, knowing everything we know, do you, as an elected Republican, vote for Hillary Clinton? And when you do, and when you telegraph it and you're honest that you did it, what does it say about you and the people in your party who agree with you? Should we go through the roster of Clinton policy beliefs? Should we spell out what Hillary Clinton being elected president means for the Supreme Court? And we have Republicans apparently running around proudly saying to Brett Baer and others in the media that they're thinking of voting for her. They really think they're helping what by doing this? They really think that that's going to inspire Trump supporters to abandon him? What do they think is going to happen when they are open about this? Now, some of them talking to Brett Baer, it's apparently off the record. But I think the numbers would surprise you. The names probably wouldn't, but I think the numbers of Republicans that might be tending in this direction would surprise you. Because they're taking all of this personally. They're taking it as a personal rejection of them and their breeding and their standing and their brilliance and their competence and their qualifications and their accomplishments and all of that. But stop and think what that would actually mean. But they're talking about, so we have a Cruz and Trump ticket. Trump Cruz, put it in proper order, the way the caller mentioned it. What happens to these Republican establishment guys who dislike both of them? But let's say that for discussion purposes, that's the ticket. Can the party unify behind that ticket? Can the Republican establishment get behind it? Can the money people donate to it? Will the consultants actually not sabotage the ticket? Like they did sabotage Sarah Palin. It's all valid questions. Those are all valid questions. So another break here we have to take. We'll stop and think about that. That's an interesting suggestion there in a whole lot of ways. We'll be right back. Great to have you back, El Rushbo, on the cutting edge of societal evolution. Here's Julie in Farmington Hills, Michigan. Great to have you on the program. Hi.
Hi, Rush. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for calling.
I don't often disagree with you, but I do disagree with your analysis of Michigan possibly going to Trump in the general election. I have many family members and friends who are very anti-Trump, all Democrats, and they took to the polls yesterday to vote against Donald Trump by voting for Kasich. There were robocalls that went out from Mitt Romney, who is still very beloved in Michigan, asking people to vote for Kasich. And I think a lot of people took that to heart. And it's a very blue-collar state. There's no way that I can see this state ever going to Trump.
Okay, well, I didn't say that I thought that was going to happen. I asked the question as a possibility, given that crazy Bernie beat Hillary and that Trump won the Michigan primary by the polling data was not quite right either. So Trump winning that, I just asked, is it possible that what we've seen here is that Trump could win Michigan in a general? Now, I know you've got your friends who would never do this or that, and Romney's still beloved there, and Kasich and so forth. But by the time we get down to November, Romney and Kasich are not going to be factors unless they're still out there trying to gum up the works. Aaron, Franklin, Tennessee. Glad you called. Great to have you on the program. Hi.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for taking my call, Rush. You said in the first hour that Cruz can win, and I want to describe two demographics that I'm not sure you bring out very much that are the reason Cruz can both beat Trump and Clinton, and why it's the same reason that Trump can't beat Clinton any more than Romney could, okay? And the two groups are, I'm one of them, the evangelical, never Trump voter, but the folks I rub shoulders with, many of them are evangelical, never Clinton voters, okay? And so the never Trump voter, which is me, we're Bible-believing Christians. We simply believe that God is sovereign, and that means he chooses kings, he chooses nations over the course of history for his purposes. So when I go in the voting booth, it isn't so much to choose, the national executive. I'm just trying to do the right thing. I want to choose the candidate that has godly wisdom, integrity, morality, character, and leadership. So if I go in there and the choice is Trump and Clinton, I'm faced with two candidates batting 0 for 5. I'm not going to dignify either one of them. And I'm not going to rationalize, and vote for the repugnant indecency of Trump just because the pervasive criminality of Clinton is worse. God will take care of that. So that's the constituency, that I'm in. But many, many more of my friends are more evangelical, never Clinton voters. And I think when you talk about the great support for Trump, I'm not so sure. And I think South Carolina is an indicator that half of Trump's support is really very thin. And they're only going that way because he has momentum, and they just like Clinton more.
Well, wait a minute. Trump hasn't faced Clinton in South Carolina. I'm not sure I'm following you here.
No, I'm just saying if it were to come down to Trump and Clinton, then the only reason they're pushing. Well,
no, the way you've set it up, if it comes down to Trump and Clinton, you've got nobody to vote for.
That's my point. But that's okay. I'm not angry and a white angry male. I just see God as sovereign. He moves men and nations. He'll take care of that. I don't feel compelled to vote for either one, and I don't think that's a cop-out. I'm going to go in and I'm going to write Ted Cruz's name on the write-in ballot. And that's how many people didn't vote for Romney. Right?
Well, look, you could. There is no way a write-in candidate's going to win anything. A write-in candidate's not going to win any race that we're talking about here that matters. And if the choice comes down to Trump or Clinton, you're sitting out. Which is if you're not going to make a judgment on lesser of two evils, as you say, if they're both irredeemable, then you may as well not even vote. You don't have your write-in isn't going to matter. And I don't want to get cynical here, but when you look at the demographic spread here, one of the things that's got everybody puzzled is that Trump is getting a lot more evangelical voters than anybody thought. And the second half of that is that Ted Cruz is not winning them all, which is what everybody thought would happen. This is why I have been saying, in an attempt to be helpful, see, I know what Senator Cruz's strategy has been. I've talked about it with him long before he ever decided, or before he told me anyway, that he was running for president. I had lunch with him down here one day, and it was 3 years ago. There's an event here every November that David Horowitz puts on called Restoration Weekend. And he called and said, let's have lunch, and I did. And he was talking about the 2012 election and that 5 million Republicans sat home and didn't vote. And he was telling me, he was laying out strategy for a presidential run, although he didn't say that. He didn't announce to me, he didn't tell me that he was thinking of getting in. He was just analyzing things. And he told me his view, the 4.5 to 5 million who didn't vote were mostly evangelical. Some of them were, nevertheless, rock-ribbed conservatives that were just unhappy with Romney for whatever reason, unhappy with the party for whatever reason, and had just decided that they weren't going to help anymore. They have been trying to help, they've been supportive, they've been donating, they think they've been ignored, sabotaged, whatever, after every election. Well, he said if those 4.5 to 5 million could be inspired to show up and vote, and nothing else changes, then the Republicans win. If 4.5 million people that did vote in the McCain-Obama presidency in 2008, that sat home in 2012, if they had voted, that Romney would win, but they didn't. So his strategy was to focus on those 4.5 to 5 million and just not assume and not take for granted, but just figure that the other Republicans who voted in 12 would again show up and vote in 16. That the trick was to get those 4.5 to 5 million. In his view, the majority of them were evangelicals. He also threw a number out at me that I had not heard before. And I've heard it since, that there are, it's either 39 or 49 million evangelicals out there in the country who vote that way. Now, I'd always thought the number was closer to 24 million, and they were not termed evangelicals. Back when this was all being discussed, it was the Christian right or the moral majority or whatever, but the name now is evangelical. So Cruz patterned a campaign that was based on targeting that group of people. And I think it has limited his appeal. And I think the evidence, because he's capable of reaching out to a much greater base of voters than just evangelicals. But if he was right, if the difference in winning versus losing is getting 4.5 to 5 million evangelicals to show up, then that's what he's been trying to do. That's where he's targeting, and you can see it. Now along comes Trump, and everybody's now having to rethink what they thought they do that evangelicals are, what the definition of an evangelical is. Because most people not religious, most apolitical or a-religious people in Washington, say, in the media, both parties, people that they believe in God, but it doesn't matter to them. It doesn't have any effect on the way they campaign or govern. They look at evangelicals and they see kooks. They see holy rollers, whatever the term is, whatever the derogatory, that's who they think they are. And now when some are voting for Trump, they are confused like you can't believe. Because in their world, there is no way a person devoted to God could even watch Trump on TV, much less vote for him. That Trump is a walking sin after sin after sin that's compounded and compounded. That he is an affront to God. That's not who that is, again, what non-religious people who have no idea who evangelicals are, that's how they think of them. So when some evangelicals, exit polls, entrance polls, admit to voting for Trump, they are totally confused. They do not understand it because, and many of these are political consultants too, and these political consultants all tend to make every group, however they group them, monolithic, such as all white women care about one thing, and you have to target them on whatever that one thing is. Either they're soccer moms one year, or they're pro-lifers one year, they're pro-choicers, whatever they are, that's how you go, and you get them all. It's not even considered that within that large group of people, you might have totally different ways of thinking with different value sets. African Americans, they're thought to be single-issue voters, civil rights, racism, all that stuff. Hispanics, how are they thought of? They're thought of within the confines of the immigration fight. Evangelicals, when analyzed, thought of, looked at by non-religious people, they are thought to be holy roller kooks who are not very bright, who do not think anything that happens to them in their lives is because of anything they do, that everything that happens is because God willed it. God makes the flowers grow. God makes the flowers die. God causes the airplanes to crash. God causes the airplanes to land. And that's how they think of evangelicals. They think evangelicals condemn anybody who says damn and hell. They think evangelicals never have sex unless the objective is to have a kid. They think evangelicals do not like anybody talking about having sex. They don't like anybody swearing. They don't like anybody cussing. They don't like anybody bragging. They don't like anybody saying 2 Corinthians instead of 2 Corinthians. And if they spot them, they're done with them and they toss them out. And yet, a lot of these people that the establishment thinks they know who they are voting for Trump. And they can't understand it because they look at them as all alike, as identical, and monolithic. And the picture they have of them is the result of nothing but prejudice. And I'll even throw in a little bigotry. They think they're all automatically homophobes. They think they're haters. They think that all evangelicals have their wives barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, doing nothing but serving whatever whims and demands their husbands are. They're prisoners in their own homes. Now, there are religious people like that, but it isn't Christians. But they don't see where that actually exists in the world. They think it's existing in America in the evangelical community. My point is, I got to take a break. That's what I have to do here. So sit. Let me draw an analogy that I ran into the other day to try to explain this briefly in the time remaining here. Let's say in your house you discover an infestation of rats. You're an evangelical. Now, the Washington establishment, and not just them, but people who are not religious, and are proud of it. They're not all God holy rollers. They're open-minded and they're free spirits. They think that a holy roller evangelical who has an infestation of rats in his house thinks it's God's will and doesn't do anything about it. Well, the fact of the matter is, whether you're an evangelical or Jack Nicholson, you do not want your house infested with rats. The rats in this case are the Democrat Party. And let's say you've prayed, you've gone to the pastor, you've done any number of things to get rid of the rats, and nothing's worked. And you have, maybe you've hired an extermination company to come out, maybe they cheated you, whatever, but they didn't get rid of the rats. And some guy comes on TV and promises you he's going to get rid of the rats. And when he does, he says he's going to get rid of the damn rats. And he does some other things. He brags about his sex life, and he brags about this, and he brags about his achievements and his accomplishments. And he talks about religion in ways that makes you think he really doesn't understand it, but it doesn't matter because he's going to get rid of the rats. He's going to fix whatever's wrong. The point of this is that everybody who is not an evangelical, predominantly liberal Democrats, but there's some in the Republican establishment too who do not understand evangelicals, look down on them because they have totally misunderstood and mischaracterized them, thinking they're all alike and they're all single-issue types. They care only about abortion and pro-life, and that they're unforgiving, they're unrelenting, they're inflexible, they're not very bright, all of these things. And they're not that. That's not who they are. So when a third of AP had a story on what was it, March the 6th, about Trump's ability to attract evangelical voters confounds analysts. And the AP number is that 1/3 of evangelicals are actually voting for Trump. They don't understand it. And the reason is they don't understand evangelicals. They're just like everybody else in a lot of ways. And they're much more tolerant than they are given credit for. But they are victimized by so much misconception, preconception, prejudice, bias, that it's hard for people to really... Look at this in Mississippi. Last night, Trump got 48% of the evangelical vote, according to exit polls, and Ted Cruz got 39%. You know how many people's heads are swimming today trying to process that? They can't for the life of them understand it. Back in a minute. No, it's not complicated. What it means is that not every evangelical thinks alike. There's all kinds of different evangelicals, and they have different interests, and they have different priorities. Just like no two women, no group of women all think the same thing on everything, no group of men, white, black, whatever. But this is what the left has done. The left categorizes, it puts everybody in groups and then assumes that the group is monolithic. And then they set out to attack the group or to appeal to the group on that basis. There are no individuals. Everybody's a group, and everybody's a member of groupthink, and particularly on the left. And it's so wrong. It's demeaning, and it gets everything. That's why all of these different groups on the right are categorized and then misunderstood and routinely disrespected and impugned. Look at the exit poll. And by the way, welcome back. Rush Limbaugh here at 800-282-2882. CNN. Exit poll data. Democrat, Republican voters worry about the economy. I cackle listening to these people analyze their exit polls. And they're the same exit polls. Every network gets the same data. It's a consortium of the networks. They get together, they pay the polling company to go do the exit polling, and they all report like it's unique, but they've all got the same data. They've all got the same analysis, because it is the same data. So, while everybody's thinking that what Trump's primary support group is based on is immigration issues, amnesty, and so forth, these people are shocked. When they look at the exit poll data, both Democrat and Republican voters' number one concern is the economy. Doesn't surprise me. This economy is a mess. This economy is a disaster. There's 94 million Americans not working. But if you live inside Washington, you don't know that. You think the unemployment rate's 4.9% because that's what the government figure puts out is. And they think that in Washington, the unemployment rate's 3%, per capita income average around 200 grand. Housing prices are high. I mean, everything's fine in Washington, D.C. All the economic indicators there are fine. The government's own numbers on the economy are also good because they're made up. And then they see the exit poll data, and they expect the people to be off the charts angry about immigration, but instead up at the top there's the economy. Well, you can't separate the two. But see, they think the anti-immigration people are racists, and that's why they're anti-illegal immigrant. They think they're bigots. They cannot fathom that people who have a problem with illegal immigration, primary concern is what it's doing to the economy. Now, immigration does show up as something voters say they're upset with, and it shows up at like number 5 or 6 in the most recent exit polling. And so these wise men and the analysts at the media, the drive-bys, they sit there and they wring their hands and they don't understand. And they think, by the way, they misinterpret this. And they think, well, maybe Trump's not as strong as we thought, because we all thought that people glommed onto Trump because they're racist and they're bigots and they're anti-people of color and they're anti-Mexicans and so forth. And maybe there's an opening. Maybe most people upset about the economy. They don't understand that the two are related and that people are sophisticated enough to understand why. But look how easily they toss off the number one issue of voters worrying about the economy. Oh, well, that's no big deal because the economy's fine. They'll figure it out at some point, say the official analysts and media people. The economy is not fine. There's nothing about the economy that's fine. The jobs that are being created are not career-oriented jobs. They're 30-hour, 39-hour, 29-hour-a-week jobs. Many of them do not include health care. Those perks and benefits are dwindling. But the masters of the universe have no idea. Because in their world, everything's cool. Everything's fine. In their world, the economy's rebounding. Yeah, we got a solid 1% growth in the GDP. That ain't negative, they say. That's doing good. We're coming back. Never mind the fact that even Joe Biden said all the way back in 2009 that in order to replace the jobs lost in the recession, we would need to create 500,000 to 600,000 jobs a month for a couple or 3 years. We're nowhere near it. Wages are not going up. People are being kicked out of their jobs for cheaper labor at high-tech businesses, the old H-1B visa story. Of course the economy's not. The problem here is that in this exit poll in the presidential race in 2012, I don't even want to remind you of this. I knew it was over at the 5 o'clock wave of exit polls when I saw that 60% of the people still blame Bush for the economy. So that's it. And a lot of Democrats still do. The Limbaugh theorem is still in wide and thorough use by the Democrat Party. Everything going wrong, Obama's still not blamed for it, whatever it is. He's not even blamed for screwing up the health care system. You know how I know that? Hillary and crazy Bernie are running for the presidency, the Democrat nomination, on what a mess the health care business is. How in the world can they be doing that with any credibility unless Obama is not being blamed for it? And he's not. Obama's getting credit for trying to fix it, for taking the first necessary steps, but Bush and the Republicans previous made it so bad. This is the way they look at things. But we know that is Obama policy, Democrat Party policy, that's responsible for these messes that we are in. And so do our primary voters. And therein is the problem, I say over and over again. Republican voters do not think their own Republican elected officials see it that way. Hello, Donald Trump. Even if you're evangelical, evangelicals do not want to live in poverty. Evangelicals do not want to not have jobs. Evangelicals want to have careers. Evangelicals are not throwing down prayer rugs 10 times a day and throwing it all open to God. Evangelicals are self-reliant people. They want obstacles taken out of their way. Yeah, they go to church now and then. So what? They're not oddballs. They're not kooks. And they certainly aren't responsible. They're not racist, they're not sexist, they're not bigots, they're not responsible for what's gone wrong in the country. But everybody wants to blame them. And then everybody wants to be afraid if they ever get anywhere near close to power. So we have to tar and feather them. We have to mischaracterize them. We have to impugn them to the point that people have no idea who they are. And then when it's discovered that some of them are voting for Trump, a majority in Mississippi? Mississippi? What? Mississippi? You mean a person of God voting for Trump in Mississippi? It's not a stunner to me. It's only a stunner if you have a distorted, totally incorrect, bigoted impression of evangelicals. And I guarantee you that everybody who doesn't know what an evangelical is, that's involved in politics, particularly on the Democrat side, but even some in the Republican consultant class, have no idea who they are. They have bought into this manufactured image. Don't want them anywhere near power because they're going to turn everything over to God. Okay, well, let's snurgle. I thought the South was supposed to be a lock for Ted Cruz. See, this isn't. I can't do anything but hurt myself in answering this one for you, but I'll give it a shot. Well, let's. Why isn't Ted Cruz just dominating with evangelicals when he has an attitude and a message that seems to be exclusively tailored to them? That's your question, right? I mean, you're trying. Why is it, here comes Trump, who probably brags, he belches, but Trump doesn't drink. He never has. He doesn't smoke. He never has. You didn't know that? No, he doesn't. He has no vices other than he's a braggart. I don't know his vices. He doesn't have any vices. But I don't even know that I know that. That's not the point. Why isn't a message exclusively tailored to evangelicals by someone who is ostensibly an evangelical himself, Ted Cruz? Why is he not cleaning up with the evangelical vote? Why did he not win the majority of it in Mississippi? You have an answer? Do you have any theories at all why this might be? What you need to ask yourself before you answer that, you need to ask, why do I think that all evangelicals will only vote for an evangelical? Why do I think that only women would vote for other women? Why do I think that men would only vote for other men? Why do I think that blacks would only vote for other blacks? Why do I think that Hispanics will only vote for people who want illegal Hispanics to be able to come to? Why do I think these things? You need to answer those questions before you get to, why are some evangelicals voting for Trump? When those other questions, you realize not all men do think alike, and not all women are alike, and not all blacks are alike, and not all Hispanics are alike. All vets are not alike in terms of the way they think. So why do we assume that evangelicals are? And why do we then assume that the area of interest of an evangelical is so narrow that it only involves God, church, prayer, scripture, and no fornicating? Why do we think that? And then why do we think that an evangelical would not support a divorcee? Why do we think an evangelical would not only not support one, but would condemn one? Why do we think that there's no way an evangelical could possibly support anyone who has been in the gambling business for profit? Why do we think that? My only point is here, evangelicals are individuals just like everybody else is. They have individual concerns. But somehow people don't think that the fact that they're evangelical and therefore believe in God and are devoted to God think that they have abandoned self-reliance. They have abandoned responsibility. I guarantee you that many of the people we're talking about honestly believe that Hispanics get up every day. If they stub their toe, God willed it. If they cut themselves shaving, God willed it. One of the reasons why, look at what television shows do, the way they caricature various groups of people that they mock or make fun of. How many times have you seen one of these latest, the medical craze, like Chicago Med, Code Black? You can make book on the fact that in at least 2 episodes, one of the sick or injured is going to be a religious person who refuses medical help. Goes, God's going to fix it. You get that scalpel away from my daughter. God's going to kill. I want no part of your drugs. You can make book on it. How often does that really happen? So few times you could put them in a thimble. And yet look at how many people think that's who they really are. Because they just don't know. My point is, it doesn't surprise me. I know a bunch of evangelicals. Look at the Hutch. You remember the Hutch, the late, great Hutch? Pastor of his own church. If you ran into the Hutch on the streets of Seattle, you would no more think this guy was an all-God minister until the subject came up or until you asked the right question. And then if he thought God was the answer to a problem, he would tell you. But he didn't get out of the car saying, I am Minister Hutchinson, you are a sinner, and I am here to tell you where you're wrong, and if you don't believe me, you're condemned to hell. You would never hear that from him unless you went to his church and asked him about it. He would not impose. But that's not what people think. They don't think evangelicals are regular people. They're not normal people. But evangelicals laugh. They get amused. They find admirable qualities in everybody. Most people think an evangelical looks at one sin and that's it, forever condemned, want nothing to do with them, get them out of my life, don't let them near power. So many misconceptions. But it's not just evangelical. This is what the left has done to conservatives in general. It's what they're trying to do to white men right now and white women. I mean, there is an all-out... The culture war is really rooted around restructuring the power base. And that's what people are reacting to in many ways. There are a lot of evangelicals. They don't want the Democrat Party to redo the societal structure. They don't want liberals in charge of all this. And if Trump's going to stop them, well, got to make compromises, got to make sacrifices. Maybe you have to look the other way on certain things, but it's more important to save America right now. They're entirely capable of having that point of view. They can and do put their country first, just like the rest of us do. Be right back. Don't go away. I'm holding here in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers a piece, and I've had it in the stack here for a couple of days, and it's got buried over here by other things. But why evangelicals support Trump? It's by Steve Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell Research and Communications of East Lansing, Michigan. It's published at Real Clear Politics. Now, it's in-depth, and we will link to this page at rushlimbaugh.com. Let me give you the highlights as I deduced them from reading the piece. First, and they did a poll. They surveyed evangelicals all over the fruited plain, and they admit to being shocked at what they found. Results are fascinating, they say. First, we found out that one of the major religious political figures of the time was very unpopular with evangelicals. In fact, for every evangelical who had a favorable opinion of him, 2 had an unfavorable opinion. The credibility of the survey was validated when we shared this information with one of the major presidential campaigns, and this leader voluntarily stepped down as the spokesperson for the Christian right. Second, we found that abortion was not the prime motivator for evangelical Christians. In fact, of the 400 people that we interviewed, about one-third were pro-choice, something we all found surprising, and probably the reason the results of this study were never released to the public. One-third of evangelicals are pro-choice. You want to talk about something not computing with take anybody, the average Democrat Party, and a lot of Republicans. Third, we found out what did draw evangelicals to politics. It isn't issues. Strong, decisive leaders. Evangelicals got involved in politics for the same reason they got involved with their church, because they were looking for someone to help show them the way. Evangelicals were drawn into politics by strong, decisive, confident leaders, fighters. Again, it's in real clear politics. They say here, working with Christian conservative leaders in a northern city, we designed a questionnaire to get to the heart of our presumptions. The filter questions went through long and careful steps to assure that the only people we surveyed were absolutely evangelical Christians. We didn't want any pretenders or frauds getting in this survey, so we had our way of qualifying them. The poll was designed to find out what contemporary political and religious leaders they liked or disliked, what issues were important to them, with emphasis on abortion. Other than issues, what else might persuade them to get involved in politics, and finally, who they were demographically. And the results were fascinating. We found out that one of the major religious political figures of the time was very unpopular with evangelicals. But they don't identify who it is. They just said that they were stunned, and everybody loved this person. They found out the person was not popular, and they informed a political organization, and this person voluntarily stepped down as spokesman when they found out that he had no credibility. He had been fooled everybody. But they don't name who it is. Anyway, that's enough of that. We'll be back with more. We get a lot of scuttlebutt about this last night. Apparently, Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz was on the Fox News channel, and Megyn Kelly destroyed her on the concept of Hillary and Trump. Let's set it up. We have two sound bites here. Brett Baier is also in the mix, and he says to Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz, who runs the Democrat National Committee, look, when you see Bernie Sanders succeeding in Michigan, what do you think?
On the Republican side, we have Donald Trump, who says that we should ban an entire religion, we should build a wall, that we should deport 11 million immigrants, and who are talking about small hands and their manhood. I mean, really, we need to make sure that the Republicans at their next debate put a parental advisory warning on the screen before it starts, because they certainly aren't talking about the issues that are important to the American people. And they're being pretty vulgar in the process.
Right. So, Megyn Kelly, you know what the response to that is on the other side? Yeah, it's vulgar, but no one's facing the threat of indictment.
There's no one facing the threat of indictment on our side either, Megyn.
There's an open DOJ and FBI investigation into Mrs. Clinton right now.
Right. Let's not be melodramatic.
How is that melodramatic? Those are the facts. There's no one on the GOP side who's under threat of indictment.
You notice that, I call it a trick or whatever, Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz is asked, what do we make here of Bernie, crazy Bernie, winning Michigan? And she knows that it doesn't matter because the delegate game is rigged against crazy Bernie. She can't say that, so she just launches into an attack on the Republicans. And in normal media circles, that would be allowed to happen. They'd accept her answer and move on. And then they hit her with the indictment question. And I did watch. It was a beautiful thing to watch. Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz had deer in the headlight eyes during this whole thing. You know, their turnout on the Democrat side remains pathetically low. There isn't any enthusiasm. And by the way, Drudge just posted a story recently, and it's always the headline behind the headline that interests me. The headline of this story, FBI boss becomes political problem. Well, the FBI boss, James Comey. James Comey was one of John Ashcroft. John Ashcroft was evangelical, by the way. Did you know that? John Ashcroft was an evangelical, and he was a regular guy from Missouri. I happen to know him. Anyway, Comey was one of his top aides. James Comey, to this day, has a reputation that is sterling. And so now we've got a story in The Hill, I think it's thehill.com, about what a problem Comey is becoming to the regime. And two stories are cited. The fight that's being picked with Apple over encryption of smartphones, and the Hillary Clinton email story. And it is apparent from reading the story that many in the regime thought the Hillary story would have faded away by now. But it isn't fading away, and in fact, it may be intensifying, what with the continued release of data and emails and the knowledge we are gaining about her trafficking and now originating classified data. Up to now, we've been told, well, sure, Mrs. Clinton was trafficking, but it wasn't classified at the time. She didn't know. It didn't have a stamp on it. The response was, well, but she should have known, because anything going back and forth is going to be classified at her level. But now we find out she was originating emails, documents that were classified, and sending them all over Kingdom Come. So I still don't see an indictment. I just, like I said yesterday, I think the Clintons have got information on anybody, including Obama. And it wouldn't take, much but 3 or 4 holes in a golf game for Bill Clinton to put his arm around old Barack. Hey, buddy, you remember back in those days, Ted Kennedy, I thought you were a waiter. You want those days to be real, because let me tell you something, buddy. You try to take her out. You try to do some damage, and I am going to fire back. We got stuff on you you don't even remember you did. And if you want everybody to know about it, you just go after it. And I guarantee you something like that has happened. That's how the Clintons operate. That's how they've remained, quote-unquote, clean and pure as the wind-driven snow all these years. Back in a moment. Don't go. Farmington, Missouri next. This is Chris. Yeah, great to have you. Hey, Chris, when I was growing up, Farmington had a home for the criminally insane. Is it still there?
We still have the mental hospital here, yes.
Yeah,
right
okay.
Next to our state prison.
No kidding. Well, I just wanted to make sure I remember. Nice to know it's still the way it was at home.
Yes.
Thanks, Chris, for the call. What's up?
My thought is the establishment is desperate. They have hit their last chance to kill Trump's campaign. They've had Bush, crashed and burned. They started edging up to Rubio. He's going down in flames. The only way to kill Trump's campaign is they have to endorse Donald Trump. They are so hated. They need to take advantage of this if they truly want to kill Donald Trump's campaign. They have to endorse him.
Yeah, you don't seriously think that would happen. This is a clever thing to say, but you really don't think that'd be the result. If the establishment endorsed Trump, that would be the end of Trump.
No, I think
if that happened tonight on TV, Trump would do a 2-hour press conference claiming it only took 1 day to unify the party after his Trump steaks, Trump vodka, Trump wine, and Trump water show, that he was able to unify the party in one press conference. That's what would happen. And then the establishment guys doing it as a trick, hoping it would destroy Trump, would blow it sky high by getting mad as hell when it didn't work. And they would abandon Trump again.
But they're desperate. They have no other choice.
Yes, they do. They still have not a choice. They have an opportunity in their minds. And that's the convention. They run the convention. They can change the rules of their convention by virtue of the rules they've written. The governing rules of the Republican convention right now are written in 2012. And they were written to handle circumstances they anticipated happening this year. The circumstances they anticipated have not happened. Who could have anticipated Trump? What they wrote the rules to head off in this year, they wrote the rules assuming Romney would be elected. Romney would be president right now. We're going into the Republican. They wrote the rules that exist today to deny Rand Paul and Ron Paul a shot at winning the Republican nomination, either in the primaries at the convention. And it's all there in Rule 40. Rule 40, as constituted at present, says that even in an open convention, no candidate can receive the nomination unless he or she has received a majority of delegates in 8 states. Can somebody tell me, does anybody other than Trump right now qualify under Rule 40? Has has Cruz won a majority of delegates in 8 states? Well, we know that Rubio hasn't, and we know that Kasich hasn't, and we know none of the others have. So they're going to have to change that rule right away. And the Republicans are having a meeting in April. And I guarantee you that Rule 40 and that 8-state requirement is going to be redone to like 1 state or 2 states, or who knows whatever other rules they write in this thing. And the way the rule is written, they can change the rule the day before the convention. You know what? It's a long document. It's found on the Amazon servers where it's stored, and I could link to it. Maybe I don't know if it's a slog getting through this thing, and Rule 40 is really where the gold is. But my point is, they run the convention. Trump is not going to run the convention. The Republican Party, the RNC, and related figures run the convention. And that is going to be their last gasp effort. Now, we've been through this, and if Trump wins a majority of delegates, a plurality, but doesn't get to 1237, here's I'm getting too much in the weeds. I don't have time to go there, but let me put one thought in your head. The first ballot, delegates are pledged to vote for the candidate who won those states. So let's use Florida. Florida is a winner-take-all this next Tuesday, 99 delegates. So in the first ballot, all those 99, those delegates chosen by the state, they're not chosen by Trump people. They're chosen delegates to the convention from the state. They have to vote the way the people of Florida voted in the first ballot. But if the first ballot doesn't get them a nominee, and it goes second or third ballots, then hello, that's what they call brokered or open or what have you. Well, what happened if in those 99 delegates, 80 of them are actually for Rubio in their personal preference, which in the second ballot they can vote? Or what if 85 of them are favoring Cruz? The first ballot, they are pledged to vote the way the people voted. After that, they can be bribed, they can be bullied, they can be bought. I'm being facetious, of course. That's where the horse trading begins. That's what the party has remaining to it in terms of options. Because they're not going to be able... We'll know a week from today, when Florida and Ohio are in. We're going to know whether first ballot we have a winner or not. And if we do, if Trump gets over 1237, time to go to convention, all this that we're talking about is academic. It doesn't happen unless they change the rules. I mean, if they do that to deny Trump even after he's won it, then they can create total chaos. They can cause the whole party and everything else to blow up. And if some of these people out there promising to vote Hillary, you got to be very concerned here that there are some Republicans who might totally lose control. This is going to be fascinating to watch all the way through the process. Make no mistake about it. No, that's my point. Trump does not think he's the second most presidential guy since Lincoln. Just like he doesn't think The Art of the Deal is the second best book to the Bible. He's putting people on when he says that, and his audience knows it, and they're chuckling, but the offended think he's serious and get outraged over it, and that's why everybody's laughing at it. We'll see you tomorrow, folks.